Deep in the woods of New York, there's a special place called Sleepy Hollow. It's a quiet village that seems like it's filled with magic and mystery. The tall trees there seem to whisper old stories, if you're listening closely. The rivers shine and sparkle, and some say they hold secrets from long ago. As the day turns to night, the sky becomes a mix of orange and purple, making the village look even more magical. Many of the people of Sleepy Hollow are the descendants of the original settlers, and they love sharing their tales. During the day, Sleepy Hollow runs like any other town, as the people go about, engaging in their farming and trading. But when night comes, and a cool mist covers the village, everyone gathers around warm fires. The older members of the town tell stories that have been shared for many, many years. Everyone listens closely, especially when they're telling stories about the Headless Horseman. They say he's a ghostly rider that lost his head in a battle, and now he rides around the village at night. The children, wide open eyes, imagine every detail, while the grown-ups nod, remembering the times they heard the stories as children. Every time someone mentions the Headless Horseman, a quiet feeling falls upon the people. It's like everyone remembers just how mysterious and special Sleepy Hollow really is. In the heart of Sleepy Hollow lived a man named Ichabod Crane. Now, Ichabod wasn't like everyone else. He was tall and skinny with long arms and legs that reminded some of a spider. His nose was long, kind of like a bird's beak, which gave him a curious look, but his eyes were always wide and alert, perfectly matched to how he loved to learn and discover new things. Ichabod's family was not from Sleepy Hollow. He came from Connecticut to be the schoolteacher. He taught the kids in a small schoolhouse where the sounds of lessons and laughter could be heard. But teaching wasn't his only talent. He was also in charge of the village choir, leading people in song with his strong and clear voice. After school, Ichabod loved visiting the homes of his students, especially if they invited him over for dinner. Ichabod had a hearty appetite. He could eat more than anyone would guess by looking at his thin frame. And oh, how he loved the tasty dishes the villagers cooked. It wasn't unusual for him to stay a little longer at homes where he knew big, delicious meals awaited him. But there was another reason Ichabod loved to visit the villagers. He was absolutely fascinated by ghost stories. He'd sit with the elderly people, listening closely as they told tales of spirits and strange happenings in Sleepy Hollow. Each story would make his eyes grow wider, and even though he'd sometimes shiver in fear, he just could not resist hearing more. Ichabod had dreams too. He often imagined living a life of comfort with plenty of food and not a worry in the world. And as days turned to months in Sleepy Hollow, his dreams began to take a new shape, all because of a certain young lady in the village, Katrina Van Tassel. Katrina was the kind of girl that could make anyone's head turn. She had rosy cheeks, bright eyes, and a laugh that was as cheerful as a songbird's tune. But it wasn't just her beauty that caught Ichabod's attention. Katrina was also the only child of the wealthy farmer, Baltus Van Tassel. The more he got to know Katrina, the more Ichabod would daydream. He imagined a life where he married Katrina and became the master of Van Tassel Farm. He saw himself sitting by a grand fireplace, feasting on delicious pies and roasted meats every day. The thought of being wealthy, respected, and married to the most beautiful girl in town sounded like paradise to Ichabod. But Ichabod wasn't the only one who had his eyes on Katrina. There was another man, a strong, boisterous fellow named Abraham Van Brunt. But everyone called him Brom Bones. Brom was the exact opposite of Ichabod. He was broad, muscular, and loved playing pranks on people just for fun. And Brom, too, wanted to win Katrina's heart. This began a silent battle between Ichabod and Brom. While Ichabod tried to impress Katrina with his singing and education, Brom tried to woo her with his strength and daring deeds. The village was abuzz with talk about the love triangle, with everyone curious to see who Katrina would choose. However, Brom, being the prankster that he was, didn't wait around. He started playing tricks on Ichabod. hoping to scare him away from Sleepy Hollow and Katrina. From time to time, he'd make eerie noises outside of Ichabod's home, or imitate ghostly whispers. Brom did all he could to frighten the superstitious schoolteacher. Life in Sleepy Hollow became even more interesting as the villagers watched this game of cat and mouse unfold. One day, there was an announcement that brought great excitement to the residents of Sleepy Hollow. The Van Tassels were hosting a grand autumn party at their sprawling farm. Invitations went out, and soon the entire village was buzzing with anticipation. It was the perfect occasion for Ichabod to make his feelings known to Katrina, and for Brom to showcase his bravado. The night of the party was clear, with a million stars twinkling above. The Van Tassel home was alight with lanterns and candles casting warm glows everywhere. Music, laughter, and the scent of delicious food filled the air. Ichabod made sure to look his best. He danced with Katrina, and for a moment, he felt that she might actually be interested in him. The glances she gave him, the slight touch of her hand, it all made his heart race. Brom, not to be outdone, began telling the crowd stories of his bravery and strength. He played the fiddle, giving everyone a lively tune to dance to. But whenever he saw Katrina and Ichabod together, a jealous expression flashed upon his face. As the night wore on, the gathering began to share ghost stories. The tale of the Headless Horseman was, of course, the highlight. Ichabod listened, paying close attention, his imagination painting every detail. Brom, sensing an opportunity, embellished his own encounter with the phantom, making it sound even more terrifying. When it was finally time to leave, Ichabod felt a mix of hope and fear. Hope, because he believed he had made an impression on Katrina, and fear, due to the haunting tales that still echoed in his ears. As he rode through the woods, the sounds of the night seemed louder, the shadows more menacing. The tales of the Headless Horseman replayed in his mind, making every rustle and gust of wind feel like a lurking danger. Ichabod's horse, Gunpowder, seemed to sense his rider's unease. Every now and then the old borrowed horse would twitch its ears or give a nervous snort, which only heightened Ichabod's anxiety. The path through the woods, which was familiar to him by day, now felt like an entirely different world, with its dark nooks and echoing sounds. A sudden burst of wind made the trees sway and whisper. Ichabod remembered the tales the old ladies told, of spirits and ghosts that roamed Sleepy Hollow, especially on nights like this one. He hummed a tune to himself, trying to keep his rising fear at bay. But then he heard it, a sound that wasn't just the wind, or a rustling animal. It was the distant thud of hooves. They grew louder and more rhythmic, indicating a horse galloping at a steady pace. Ichabod urged Gunpowder to go faster, hoping to avoid whoever, or whatever, was behind him. A glance over his shoulder revealed a silhouette. It was a large, dark figure on a horse, and most chillingly, it seemed to be missing its head. A panic gripped Ichabod as he realized this might be the very Headless Horseman the villagers spoke of. He recalled from the old tales that the ghostly rider could not cross the bridge near the church. If he could just make it there, he'd be safe. Pushing his fear aside, Ichabod spurred Gunpowder on, racing to the bridge, with the relentless gallop of the Headless Horseman echoing in his ears. The trees seemed to blur past as Ichabod clung tightly to Gunpowder, urging the old horse to muster all of its strength. The wind howled in his ears, and the thudding hooves of the Headless Horseman grew louder, each beat echoing Ichabod's racing heart. As he neared the bridge, the moonlight revealed its worn-out planks and the shimmering waters beneath. The church's silhouette stood on the other side, offering a beacon of hope. With one last push, Ichabod steered Gunpowder onto the bridge, the wooden boards clattering under the horse's hooves. Behind him, the Headless Horseman's steed thundered onto the bridge, its rider letting out a chilling, otherworldly scream. Just as Ichabod began to believe he might escape, the Headless Horseman threw a head-shaped pumpkin at Ichabod. Morning, the villagers discovered Ichabod's hat by the broken pumpkin, and nearby, the trampled ground suggested a fierce chase. But of Ichabod Crane, there was no sign. he had vanished, leaving behind only whispers and speculations. Some said he'd been taken by the horsemen, while others believed he moved to a distant town, too terrified to return. A few claimed to have seen him in other places, alive, but forever changed by that haunted night. Brom Bones, who shortly after the incident married Katrina, would often chuckle whenever the story was mentioned. There was a gleam in his eye that made the villagers wonder if he knew a little more than he let on. In the end, what truly happened to Ichabod Crane remains one of Sleepy Hollow's most enduring mysteries.